that we have Urska and Scott with us today, and I'll be your moderator for this night. But first, I would like Urska and Scott to introduce themselves and let us know more about themselves. So we can start with Urska. How are you doing today? And good morning.
Hello,
It
good morning
seems,
from
yeah.
Chicago. So I am a big TOK enthusiast, IB teacher. I also teach language and literature and French if required. But definitely my first love is TOK. I've also been a TOK examiner for past 5 years, which means that I roughly grade about 220 essays a year that are not my own kids. So it brings a lot of experience, and it's just getting fun, more and more fun. Seriously, I cannot promote TOK more than I would love to.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks, Urska. And at the same time, we have Scott, who is also expert in history. So yeah, we'd love to know more about your experience, Scott, and your background.
Hi everyone. My name is Scott. I've been teaching and working in IB schools for over 20 years. My specialty and interest is in DP history, and also teaching TOK, Theory of Knowledge, a fascinating course that I think is one of the best things about the IB program, the IB diploma program. It makes it very special. So yeah, excited to dig in a little bit about this course, and hopefully maybe hear a little bit from our attendees as well with questions.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Thanks, Scott and Urska. And the thing is, actually, TOK as a subject, it sounds very intriguing. So it's like, is it a philosophy course or more than that? Those are a bunch of questions that I feel that students might have, especially for those who are new entries and freshies to IB. However, for older students who might be in DP 1 or 2, they might just care about grades. And I don't feel that they might see the subject as just a scoring system and we can grab as much grades from that. And from those two realms, many students are stuck in between. So today, I'm hopeful that we're gonna do an approach for this subject to ace the scores of it, but at the same time learn from this subject as much as possible, because I believe that it's essential, not just for DP students, but it will help you later on for sure. So yeah, I'm excited, and yeah, let's get things started. I will start by sharing my screen. So yeah, the first question is, what is exactly TOK? So it's theory of knowledge, but like, what is a theory of knowledge?
Yeah, so first of all, I would invite our attendees. They can type in chat if they have an idea what TOK is for them. Also, at the same time, I would love to reassure them that it's okay if you do not know or if you don't have a formed opinion yet about what is TOK. I think it would be cool if Scott and I would share with you what we learned or what definition we arrived at. Scott, would you like to go first and just explain to us what you think is TOK?
Sure. And I think I'll echo a little bit what Kira said. Like, I think generally when people who don't know too much about TOK, they say it's philosophy, a little bit of philosophy. But it wasn't until I started teaching the class that I got a much better appreciation of it. I think it's a class that teaches you really, really valuable life skills rather than necessarily content, but skills that you'll take with you and that will make you a better learner, a better citizen, better person, and most importantly, a better thinker for the rest of your life. You know, diving into questions like we do in history, which is my specialty, like how do we know what we know? And do we really know things, or do we think we know them? Now that does sound a little philosophical, but when you break down knowledge and where this knowledge comes from, and being able to be a critical thinker, one of the most important skills I think you could have, that's where the fun kind of starts. And it also talks about a lot of real life examples. It's less theory, I think, and more real life applications, authentic learning that I think students really appreciate.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, when I sometimes challenge my fellow teachers, because every teacher should be a TOK teacher, and kids to, you know, try to define it like in a sentence or two. And while I struggled at the beginning of my TOK career, I'm very clear that if you ask me to define what is TOK, it's basically a structured course on critical thinking. That's it. Like there's no philosophy. It's all extremely grounded in reality. Whatever you say or claim, you have to support with a real life situation. Just like later on, we'll see our two assessment tools, exhibition and essay, especially the exhibition where you take an object and now you have to link this real life object to a quite knowledge question, which sounds philosophical, but it isn't. So yeah, I'm quite annoyed sometimes where people shred TOK in some sort of mystery, you know, no one knows. No, it's not like that. It's quite actually clear and straightforward. And it's a super useful course that just helps you find yourself of who you are as a knower, where your influences comes from, why you think like you do. And especially in the first theme that we do, the knowledge and the knower, it's like a really nice journey of getting to know yourself as a student. Yep. So do we have maybe any answers from the participants in the chat? I can't quite see.
So far,
Right.
there aren't any answers.
No issues.
I'm also
Yeah,
checking.
Let's proceed to the next
All
slide,
right.
where we just all enjoy a video and then have a brief discussion about it later.
Just want to make sure that you all see and hear the video. Okay.
It's not like impossible. There's been a few people that have.
Is there a sound issue or it's just me?
My boots and we're gonna make it. I definitely think it's gonna be next week.
We could use a little more volume.
Yeah, Wolf's brainchild. It's not assisting you to run very fast on the water. I mean, obviously, the first step is the most important. When we like discovered, oh my God, Jesus, we're going one step, we're going two steps, we're going three steps. We're discovering it as we go along.
While we're still on land, we try to get up really speed. Soon we touch the water. We try to get like a swimming machine.
It's not straight into the water,
In a curve, in a slight curve.
and by that bend, you're actually not allowing yourself to sink into the water, and you want to keep that skimming sensation going as long as you can. Gets us those extra steps are these shoes. The original equipment where it first all started was the equipment that would help repel water. But we found some shoes by mistake, actually. Totally water repellent. It's like water off a duck's back. Takes actually a lot of practice, a lot of focus. I think if you don't actually believe that you're going to walk on that water, it's not going to happen for you. ski system. Obviously, that pulls us into the water with a bit more speed.
Be with yourself, believe in it. It's not about the miracle, it's just go for it.
Try to do it. If you fall down, try again.
People want you to think in a certain way, and this sport actually allows you to push your horizons further. It's not boxing you in and saying that's what you are. You're just like, you're moving past it all.
Whoa. I guess any student studying physics HL will be really sad seeing this video.
They don't plant thoughts in their minds. Let's hear what they say. Though the sound was not clear, but just to recap it for people who have really not heard anything, the group of people wanted to create a new sport which is running on water, and they have managed to do like 7, 8, or up to 10 steps as we saw on the video. So I would love to hear from anyone, from the participants, you know, what do they think about it? Do they want to try it? You can either type in chat or speak up if you are able to.
I guess everyone is amazed by what they saw. So
But what I want to try, let's try with a raise of hands. How many of you, if you found the video convincing, can you raise your hand? I'm just trying to get some response from our participants. So I'll raise mine for start. See, yes.
yes, we're having actually a bunch of hands risen now.
So one in TOK, one would ask ourselves, okay, so what was going on through your mind and why was it convincing, right? Because at first you're like, whoa, what is happening there? But the way they structure it, they have some instruments, they are convincing because they use elements of, I don't know, scientific research that usually convinces people, right? Scott, do you agree? You also
Yeah.
raised your hand. Yeah.
One thing too that had me thinking is I love to skim stones if I go to the water. And they said that's kind of where the idea and the research came from, right? And so seeing that stones can skip on water, that's pretty wild that they are able to do this.
And did you at any point of time, for example, for me, I was just like, first, okay, this is ridiculous. And then when they give these convincing elements, you go, wait, is it possible? No. And then you dig into your brain, wait, how would I verify this? Wait, physics, forces, the skipping stone has a lot of speed, right? And a very small weight, and the surface it has. So basically, we would probably find answers in our subjects, our IB subjects, like Kiros mentioned. The physics students, a physicist would probably laugh straight out without ever being convinced, not even a little bit. But if we are not experts, it's so easy to fool us, right? And TOK, by being exposed to things like that, to debates, actually trains you to be a bit more alert and careful and decide for yourself based on what you have. But I think that's the beauty of TOK, to prepare you to not be fooled in life.
Yes, so for example, does it allow you to differentiate between science and pseudoscience, even if you're not a scientist?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We learn about pseudoscience also. We in TOK we can talk about, no offense to anyone who believes in homeopathy and stuff, and it does help some people because we know that placebo effect is real as well. So, but it is again up to you. Okay, I decide not to believe it and I have my reason, but someone decides to believe it and they have their reasons. And we have to be open-minded in TOK that, you know, anything with a reasonable explanation goes. You shouldn't argue with each other and try to prove our point or try to win in that sense. So I propose that because of the video quality and sound, I propose we just skip the second part, which was basically, maybe we can give links to students they can see it themselves, but it was basically the making of this video, and it just shows how they're just laughing all the time, and it's basically a big joke. They were just mocking the whole idea, and it was really a hoax, so to speak. So it's really interesting to see, and you can maybe just have a look on your own at the end of the presentation. It's really funny.
Oh, or Scott, I was gonna hope to see that sport in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Well, I think if it would work, it would definitely deserve the place there, because it would defy logic. Cool. So if you agree, we can proceed to the next slide, and Scott will take over.
Sure. So this slide kind of just talks about what, following up on what TOK is, and maybe a little more practically speaking. So theory of knowledge, the idea is to give students in the IB diploma program a chance to explore and reflect on the nature of knowledge. So again, kind of, I like to think of it as how we know and why we think we know things, and the process of knowing. And again, to kind of echo what Erska said, like, it's okay if we can disagree on things, but it's really important for students and anyone to know why they believe something, right? And it's okay to believe what you want, but so long as you have an awareness of why you hold that to be true. Even if it's, a lot of students say, well, that's because it's what my parents told me. And that's fine, but that's, at least that's why you think you know it. In TOK, we look at beliefs and opinions, not just from, like I said, your parents and lives outside the classroom. As I think everybody's aware of, social media and the idea that people manipulate, like the people who made that movie, they want to manipulate the way people think, sometimes just for fun, and sometimes for a little bit more sinister reasons, sometimes for economic reason and gain, and sometimes politics and other things in the world, right? So being able to think critically, reflect on your knowledge and your beliefs and opinions. And students are encouraged to explore questions about it, the process of knowing. A lot of TOK classes are more like a seminar, like a university level course, maybe a little more so than other DP courses. It touches the things that you study in other courses, and we'll maybe a little bit more on that later, but and it's part of the IB diploma's core, right? To connect and compare between different areas of knowledge, become more aware of your own perspectives, especially in international schools and international programs, people with different backgrounds and perspectives that they have, and how they got them, and how they see themselves and how they see others, I think is really important and part of it as well. And then I think the next slide. So, I think the important thing to start with when you look at the IB diploma program and where theory of knowledge and TOK fits in is the core. You have 6 classes that are graded out of a 7. 6 times 7, it's 42 points, the most you can get. But the core provides you with 3 points. And the core focuses more on who you are as a learner, as a knower, as a thinker, as a citizen, a global citizen, and to reflect on, you know, kind of where you started, where you are, and maybe where you want to go. There in TOK, the TOK portion of the core, because we have the extended essay, we have CAS, and we have TOK. There's optional themes, so teachers can usually choose. Sometimes they ask students for their input, but the optional themes, which include knowledge and technology, knowledge and language, knowledge and politics, knowledge and religion, and knowledge and indigenous societies. As somebody who was born in the United States, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. And so when we look at knowledge and indigenous societies, that is a really fascinating conversation. So again, a lot of, one of the things I love about it, the course, real life applications, right? You're not studying old textbook boring things. It's things that impact all of our lives all the time. You have areas of knowledge and the AOKs, as if the IB doesn't have enough things that are made up of initials. In TOK, you have your AOKs. And those are the kind of mandatory or compulsory areas of knowledge. And when you have to do your essay, for instance, your TOK essay, it has to be based on these areas of knowledge. And those include probably the best class, like everybody knows, history, and then the human sciences and what that means and what the human sciences are. And then the third one would be the natural sciences, and then mathematics and the arts. So those AOKs are compulsory and need to be part of any TOK course and your assessments. I think we can go on to the next slide. Yeah.
So what we wanted to do in this workshop is to show you basically, maybe you got the theory done. It's not also hard to find all the information. The TOK guide is actually the thinnest guide in the IB program. It's really cute and concise, and you just, I don't know, 20 pages or so. It's really not a lot, and you can find all the theoretical details there. But students sometimes struggle in thinking why do I have to do this and how will this help me in life? So we'll touch upon a couple of points here. The foremost, which both Scott and I already mentioned, is critical thinking. So critical thinking, hopefully we all have an idea what it is. I think any thinking actually might have the critical elements, right? It's not like the two different things. But the questions that you would be interested in, for example, how do I pick the right college, major, or career? How do I know what I'm interested in? Or how do I know who to believe when reading news reporting on current conflicts of the world?
Yeah.
So how do I form this opinion? And even if you either don't know yet or don't have an opinion, or you, like Scott mentioned, you follow someone who is your authority, which is parents, or doctors or teachers, right? There's a reason why we listen to them when we are teens. There's also a reason why we don't listen to them because you are right now in a stage where you are becoming a thinker, because you're going to let go of the influences that are kind of natural, and you're going to start thinking for yourself, and you're going to choose basically who to believe or trust or rely on, because you are kind of becoming your own independent, authentic learner and thinker. Anything to add, Scott, maybe?
No, I think you nailed it.
Okay. And then second one I thought of was ethical dilemmas. Now, in your world, this could be like, okay, someone cheated or someone used AI and did not put a source, because IB allows you to use AI, but it has to be cited properly. So do I report it or do I not report it? Now, there's so much that goes into these answers, right? Your values, the friendship, it's complicated. So usually if some thought goes into it, and here I think when it comes to ethics is the only place where there is a lot of room for philosophy. And if you're not a philosophy student, I would always advise you to steer off ethics as in your essay, for example, because we usually, if we're not experts, we just, or at least students of philosophy, we don't really have enough depth in that. So that's one thing that is very interesting, but it's more than just are you right or are you wrong? There's so many more layers. So in case you are not comfortable with that, I would definitely advise you do not attempt it because it's going to be shallow and you're not going to get enough points. Next slide. So values and knowledge. So to what extent does my upbringing inform my decisions? Most of us, if the core theme which Scott mentioned, which is knowledge and the knower, takes up most of the year one in DP. And I think there's a good reason for it, because when, like I said, you are on a path to discover yourself of who you are as a knower and what you want to base your values and knowledge on. And it's very important that we give you the opportunity to get to know yourself, and it's incredible how much cultural baggage, for example, we carry along when we make decisions or when we decide whether to believe. I'll give you one example which just thought of. For example, the testing on animals is banned in, of course, in IB. You're not even allowed, we're not allowed to use them in any experiments and stuff. And majority of the Western world also is steering away. And if there is a chance that something is tested without harming animals, they do it. But for example, China is still very open to it, right? And like now you can't judge and you can't blame them. It's a very different world. But there are, for example, even if you Google it, there's a good RLS, there are American scientists who decide to move to China because for them to propagate science and to make new discoveries, they want to test on animals, and they disagree with the, I don't know, legislature that doesn't allow them to practice it there. So they move to China because that's what they want. So we can't, again, judge or blame them, but there is something in their value system or motivation that just makes them pursue it no matter what. And people will always find a way to what they're passionate about. Do you agree, Scott? Did you?
Sure. I mean, there's so many examples of it, and that's, again, one thing that's fantastic being in an international school. But yeah, I mean, what your values are that you inherit a lot of times from your family and your own culture. And then that word that's really important, which is bias, right? And sometimes we tend to think of bias as a negative thing, as a bad thing. But the fact is that all of us have bias. We can't help that. Sometimes we're just biased to prefer chocolate ice cream against vanilla. But our biases obviously go a lot deeper. And a lot of that has to do with where we come from and who we are. And I think at least being aware of that helps us be more well-rounded and better thinkers.
Yeah. More grounded also, I would say. Yeah, and
Yeah.
for example, I'm biased towards science, and maybe for that reason I don't open up to spirituality enough. But we must acknowledge that human body is so complicated that there is no way there is just science, like I leave that door little ajar, but I'm still like, no, science, if you can prove it to me in the scientific way, I'll go for it. And again, that probably comes from the upbringing and the values I carry along. Next slide, please, Kiros. Okay, this is a funny one because interdisciplinary thinking. And I was trying to just point kids, because most of you probably have done MYP and you had your personal project. So you know that there's a lot going on when you have a little complex project on your hands. But the funniest thing is that it's only in the school and education system that you actually have biology separately, chemistry separately, history separately. But the fact is that once you enter the adult world and the jobs, it's all mix and match, right? There is, for example, if you are I don't know, an oncologist, you cannot plan a treatment for a patient unless you also know what the radiologist did and how is the kidney function. It's like a whole team. It's like a really good analogy how a single doctor cannot figure everything out. You need like experts from all sides if you tackle real life problems. And I think it's an interesting view that we are so specialized when we get our basics in our education, but later on it's all mix and match of pretty much everything, right? All right, next slide. And the big thing is scientific method. I think you will use it a lot in your TOK essays mostly. And it can come to a very daily kind of question. Should I vaccinate myself against flu, COVID, or HPV or whatever? Or how do I decide when even the experts don't seem to be able to agree on something? And again, you might decide not to vaccinate, and there's the cultural baggage, the influence, family influence, religious beliefs. It can be anything, right? But just be aware of it. And if you do, you probably also have your own reasons. But these are like really important questions in life. And these are just two examples. There's probably many, many more for that. And I think here my bias popped out. Yeah, I'm now thinking, why did I put this scientific method? Because I think it's like the strongest, most structured thing that is out there, and that's why probably science is so trusted. Yeah, and yeah, that's anything to add there to come to my help, Scott?
Well, I was going to say, while I don't disagree with you, and I'll do some interdisciplinary thinking here, when you look at history, a lot of people have tried to use science and say that science proves certain things, and therefore we should do X, Y, and Z based on that, right? So people do try to manipulate science and try to use that argument to their own accomplish their own goals, whatever they might be. And there's lots and lots of examples of that through history. So again, just because a doctor or somebody who's a scientist says something, being critical and understanding the method and the research and they conducted and how they came up with certain conclusions is really, really important to be able to make an informed decision. Like you said, it's less important what you think, I think, to TOK teachers than knowing why you think it. So yeah, even science can be manipulated and can become dangerous.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that. So scientific method, as strong and mighty as it is best used in science then, right? You say there is no space in history because the methodologies we use there are different ones. And that's also something we learn in the course.
Yep.
Yeah.
The next slide, I think is mine, and a little bit just about practically for students, like what is it? So all of these things that we're talking about that hopefully seem somewhat interesting, but what do you have to do in terms of assessment, and how does the IB figure out where TOK fits into your overall score? There's two parts of that. One is your theory of knowledge exhibition, where I think it was mentioned earlier, you demonstrate your ability to apply some of these things to an object and communicate your ideas. And then what my grade 12s are doing right now, which is the TOK essay. The good news about the TOK essay, I think, is that the questions are released ahead of time. There's six questions or prescribed titles, PTs that you can choose from. And students get a choice here and to pursue something they're interested in. And it's an essay that has to be no longer than 1,600 words. It might sound like a lot, but it's not once you start writing, I think. In fact, a lot of students struggle more with shortening the word count. And so you pick one of these prescribed titles, and it's related to the areas of knowledge and the themes and other concepts we've already kind of touched on. And yeah, critical thinking, real life examples, really important here, to be able to use real life examples as evidence to engage with different perspectives. And it's not so much a persuasive essay, and tell me if you agree here, but it's not so much a persuasive essay as it is to recognize that a lot of times there's no black or white, that things are gray. There's not necessarily right or wrong, but people disagree, and here's why maybe they might disagree. Would you agree with that, Urska?
Yes, absolutely. One of the successful criteria for a good TOK essay is that a student is able to show different perspectives. Like without that, you won't score. So of course, one of the perspectives you can show is yours, but then the other perspective might be of an expert or of someone else, you know, usually an opposing perspective, though it doesn't have to be like in old program where it was kind of like they were looking for black and white. Now it doesn't have to, the first perspective or the second perspective does not need to negate the first one. It just has to be different. And yeah, that's a very critical component of the TOK essay. Show perspectives. Yeah. And you don't have to conclude, right? In TOK, the beauty is that's why it's probably not persuasive per se, as you don't have to conclude as, so this is how it is. Yeah, no, it's
Right.
not that easy. This is how it is sometimes, but sometimes, you know, it's different. So be very open-minded and have kind of like an open-ended conclusion in TOK essay.
Agreed.
So we'll now move to tips and tricks of, and we can link all of this. We'll have 10 tips and tricks, last 2 slides, and we will try to link it all to both the assessments. And if any students in between gets, you know, a question, just please type it in the chat, and we'll try to answer it. So whether it's essay or whether it's a essay or the exhibition, it's very crucial that you choose a topic you're passionate about. Clearly, if there was some teachers who don't care about TOK on this side, the whole webinar would probably be much more boring. So if you're passionate about something, that will show through. Now, when it comes to prescribed titles, you will unpack them in the class, usually, hopefully, and then something will, you will click with few titles more than the other. So cross those that did not click with you immediately. You'll be maybe left with 2, and then just see which are the areas of knowledge they are pushing you to answer, or if it's open-ended, choose the areas of knowledge you are passionate about, you're strong in, you actually do subjects from that area of knowledge in your IB course. It will make your essay stronger for sure. The second one, related to your interest, is, of course, there's an overlap here because you're clearly passionate about things that you're interested in. So maybe it's a little redundant here. So very similar thing. The third one is keep an idea journal. And I think, Scott, you had some good success with that with your students, right? So maybe you can just share that experience to help students tackle this.
I think, if as you're listening, maybe you're getting an idea that there's a lot of different types of thought and ideas that go through your students' minds when we talk about topics like this. And, even though sometimes the students kind of, we have to actually take a pen out and write in a book rather than clicking. Sometimes they feel that way in the beginning, but by the end, we have a journaling class that every class we write in, and students reflect about their knowledge. And when they look back on where they started, it's really useful. If you don't write at all in your learning and your school experience, I really strongly encourage you to do it. there's science that shows, there's studies that shows when you physically write, it helps you remember better. But if that's not persuasive enough to encourage you to try it nowadays, particularly, you have to write for your DP exams, and you still have to write a lot of things. And so it's useful, it's important, and it really can help you reflect and about how you know what you know.
I would also include here, for example, in the exhibitions, we need the objects. So of course, you're not just going to zero down on 3 objects immediately, but you're going to have an array of objects, and you'll choose from it. So write down the object ideas as you go. Maybe as you start your course, if you're at the beginning of it, whenever you see something, just note it down. And similarly, in objects in the essay are almost like real life situations, right? You need 2 at least per each AOK that you will explore. So write down these RLSs. If you create kind of like a bank of these real life situations, when you reach the essay phase, you will be able to look back and find the ideas quickly.
I think I'm just going to repeat that, because every year there's students who say, I wish I would have listened, and I wish I would have kept a list of the real life situations, RLSs, that are applicable, because if you don't, at the end you have to start from scratch almost. So really, that's a really important tip.
Then discussing it with others, I think that's important, because what I mentioned before, you have to show perspective, right? And if you keep it in just a bubble, of course you can get perspectives also with reading more about stuff. But when you talk with others, it's just that instantaneous feedback that you get, that you also practice to take in a positive manner, and it just brings out more ideas. It's like natural brainstorming. So it can be a teacher, it can be your parent, it can be your peer in the classroom, but please discuss your ideas with others. Sometimes students are hesitant because they say, no, I don't want someone else to take my RLS, it's such a cool RLS. Yeah? But the thing is that it's okay if someone takes it, because they will take it from a different angle. For sure, they might take a different title and a different angle, and there's no worries about academic dishonesty there. Real life examples and personal experience. If possible, I strongly encourage students for both, actually, exhibition and essay, to dig into your subjects, the internal assessments that you did, the extended essay you're working on, the experiments you did in biochemistry, amazing case study that you encountered in history. All this, again, if you note things down, they will be able to serve as a real life example for your essay. Now, since we don't have the essays until September, that's why it's smart to write them all down, because you don't know which one will fit. Another thing that I have is, I mentioned before that every teacher is a TOK teacher. So if you study a particular topic in any of the subjects, and you struggle linking it to real life situations, you should ask your teacher. Encourage them to also dig into TOK. For example, you say, okay, this is really interesting. I don't know, you learn about magnetism in physics, and you would say, what are the real life applications here? Let's discuss some of the real life situations that I could link to this topic I was really interested in. So, next slide. Yeah, Scott, I think you have talked a lot about being critical and reflective, right? It's probably also very important in history to do so.
Absolutely. It's what it's all about, right? Like looking back and figuring out why we know, or why we're being told certain things that might be considered truths that might not be, right? And why people write history, or why certain history is taught in certain places and it's not in others.
And also, from all the things that we said till now, the number one mistake that I see in kids is they start writing too late, of course, and they try to do it fast, and when they finish it, they realize it's super shallow. And that happens, and also that you ran out of things to say and that you actually don't like it. So if you follow that you discuss it with others, write it down, be critical and reflecting, bug your teacher. There's no, limit to there is one written feedback officially given, but IB does not say, no, you cannot go and ask your teacher. You can go and ask them as many times as you can. You can always also, if struggling, of course, you have wonderful resources in the Ascend Now, and you can reach out to us if you need help. But it's very important that you stay on top of it. And the next one kind of follows naturally: stay organized and plan ahead. It's almost like all these points converged into this one little nugget.
As well as the next one.
Yes. So seek feedback not only from the teacher. The most important feedback from the teacher is for the exhibition, because your teacher will grade your exhibition. And then it's just going to be externally moderated, which I think in more than 90% the grades stay the same. Yeah, so it's very important. Even if you reach out for feedback, make sure your teacher is on the same line, because he's the one who's going to grade it. And unless he's like really off, which very rarely happens, those grades are going to stay. But when it comes to the essay, of course, your teacher is not going to grade it. It's going to be the TOK examiners, and there it's even more important to have broad feedbacks. Yeah, have feedbacks from different sources. Revise and edit, like in any writing. It's kind of like a cliche, but really important. And then at the end, what we spoke is embrace uncertainty and complexity. So at the end, you might sometimes feel defeated because you'll feel like, oh, I haven't reached any conclusion. But as long as you have shown perspectives, and for example, in TOK essay, that will be like 4 perspectives, and at least. So just be happy with what you wrote, that you thought through it, that you sought feedback, that you reflected critically, and I think then you should be good. It's only if you do it last minute, quickly, and then kids submitted in my school already in December, or even earlier. Actually, we're quite quick with essays, and then in January when they read it, they're like terrified in the last minute. No, ma'am, can I rewrite the whole thing? This sounds so not smart, but so why didn't that happen before? So sometimes you also need a pause of 2 weeks. Just put it aside when you're almost done, keep it aside, and then reread it again and see it with the fresh eyes and mind.
Yeah, and just to jump in, because this, I think it's really worth pointing out, I mentioned earlier at the beginning maybe about this course is great about skills. More and more companies, when they're looking to hire people, they include this: embracing uncertainty, ambiguity. The world is changing so quickly and rapidly that we don't have the answers for everything anymore, or so it can seem sometimes. And so that's tough for students, because you like to know what's the right answer. I'll give the teacher the right answer, I'll get a good grade. But in life, that's becoming increasingly not the case. And so to be able to embrace it and be able to live with it and be comfortable with not knowing a clear right or wrong or the exact answer, hugely important skill. And TOK is great for trying to teach that.
Yeah, so a concluding thought before we go to questions and answers is, I think the ultimate goal of a TOK mind is that you are able to entertain an idea in your head without the urge to either accept it or reject it, but just to understand it. I think it's really important. And you guys have a long way to go. Me and Scott have more mileage behind us, so wisdom comes with age also. But to get these pointers, we hope that it's going to be useful for your TOK journey, and to get those 1.5 points that you can get from TOK.
All right. Thanks, Ursk and Scott, for sharing those insightful tips and tricks. So for questions, I have one question. So for example, as I'm as I'm selecting a topic, so do I select a topic that I'm passionate about or a topic that I'm confident in writing in?
Easy answer is both.
And also this probably might be the same question, because if you're passionate about something, you're going to be confident, and vice versa. But sometimes maybe push aside passion only when, for example, you're good at a subject and you have really good RLSs or amazing objects, and you just feel strong that you can write more about that. Only at that time I would push passion aside, but otherwise, no, just go with what you're passionate about and what you're confident in.
Yes. We also have another question that says, what is the biggest mistake that I can make during TOK?
That's a great question. Well, procrastinating is always pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's real. Yeah, I think it's really easy because students think, in my experience, okay, this is worth only 1.5 of maybe out of 45. So therefore, I'll give the same amount of attention to this course. That's a mistake. It's also a mistake not to trust your teacher, to know that the guidelines and what you're doing in class is all set up to prepare you to score well and to be successful. Those are two of the top ones that come to my head.
And if concretely for the assessment, I would say the biggest mistake you can make where you lose points and fail miserably in exhibition is to choose very random and generic objects. And especially if you take a generic picture, remember the object needs to be worthy of being displayed in a museum. If you would, I don't know, pick a pen, for example, you cannot pick your pen, which you replace, every month because it runs out. That's just not valuable enough. But if it's, I don't know, you found a pen in history museum where some Treaty of Versailles was signed or whatever, that it has some value. It's still a pen, but it's like concrete. So remember, the objects need to be worthy of being displayed somewhere. They have to be authored and they have to be dated. So the biggest mistake in exhibition, random, generic photos. That's a huge
and invaluable objects. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the essay, I would say the biggest mistake you can make is actually not to address both AOKs from different perspectives. It happens, you linger too much on one and really take all the word count for that. So be balanced. Don't have a very unbalanced essay.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time. But please, yeah, we also have another last question, because it's so subjective. How can I maximize my chances to score well? That's a really good question.
I would argue actually about this being subjective, although grading might appear subjective, but as an examiner, at first I was kind of lost and I was thinking, how the heck do I assign these points? And I can be only one off, otherwise they kick me off the examiner panel. But the thing is that those rubrics that we have tell more than we think. If you dive into the rubric, encourage your teacher to explain it to you well. If you seek feedback and always have that rubric, be quite annoying with the teacher and say, oh, so how did I cover all the points? What else? What did I not yet cover or something? But basically, and one more thing is, if you are authentic and use your own personal experience, it's just really believable, and it's a really usually much stronger essay. Me as an examiner, when I start reading, that makes a big difference. Okay, so be authentic self, write about what you're passionate, and it will come true. Yeah, it will come true.
Yeah, I agree that the rubric is key. Understanding, I tell students, give the examiner what they need, right? So sometimes don't overthink it and keep it subjective. Make sure you, like said earlier, make sure you're doing your two AOKs. Make sure you're giving real life examples. Make sure you're showing different perspectives. Just ensuring that you do those things, you're going to do okay, right? So the other idea is you know, a lot of teachers keep past examples. So I like to give kids an old student's TOK essay with the rubric and let them grade it, and so students can see where in the rubric you know, a certain level is, and that helps them do it. So, you know, if you can ask teachers for exemplars or old examples of a high and a low essay, sometimes that can really help.
And if at any point of time, be it exhibition or the essay, you find yourself reading and then say, wait, what was the question? That's really wrong. Huh? You have to keep the question, the knowledge question that you have for both. It's a prompt or the knowledge question. You have to keep answering that. So keep going back. Am I on track? That's one of the things. If an examiner reads any of the assessment and he has to go back to check what the question was, you're probably not on target. So make sure you answer the question they ask.
Sounds obvious, right? But that's in the rubric, and it's key.
Yeah.
So if I'm drifting away out of the question, then I'm on the wrong side now. Yeah. And do I have to include I mean, for my conclusion, for example, does it have to be a cliffhanger and like open it as I mean an open-ended conclusion, or should I drive into like certain, not a certain, but like somehow validated opinion?
Like a standard essay conclusion would be, you basically synthesize what you said above, which, so I showed this, and this perspective. And you can even add a point, but I looked at only the two AOKs. It might be the case that in the other AOKs, you know, the situation would be different. But for the scope of this essay, I did my best types. Yeah, but there's no need to conclusion. And for the exhibition, we just like to stress that there is absolutely no need for an introduction or a conclusion. The objects are standalone, and the conclusion is actually usually a waste of your word limit, because you can dig deeper in the objects if you don't have the conclusion and introduction. But as writers, I can also understand why we are so prone to introduction and conclusion, and it's like the best way to write. But particularly in the exhibition, you actually don't need that, and save your word count for the objects themselves.
Yeah. So yeah, that were all the questions that we had. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. But thanks, Uriska and Scott, for such a wonderful and insightful webinar, and for sharing all of your experiences and your tips and tricks with us. And hopefully this will take the course and the essays and the exhibitions for the student to a whole new level and a whole new perspective that they can not just benefit from during their school years, but like later on, because I believe those subjects, it's unlike the STEM subjects, but like those subjects, they dive deep into the core, and they are life lessons, and you can learn much, and it just broaden your horizons and gives you a new perspective to life. So thank you for having such a wonderful time, and for sparing this hour with us today. That was really helpful, and it was much needed.
Thank you.
And thanks all for joining. This webinar will be aired on our website, so feel free to watch it anytime and to review it whenever you need. And yeah, if you have any questions, just reach out to us either to Uriska, Ska, or I, and we'll be always happy to assist you with your TOK exhibitions and essays. And yeah, best of luck. We'll stop the recording. All right. Thanks, Uriska.